To some lunchtime motivation. I am Dr. Sherlonda Adkins, bringing you greetings from the beautiful and sunny Charleston, South Carolina. I am a physician assistant. I work primarily in psychiatry with a background also in internal medicine. I started a telepsychiatry practice in 2020, right before the pandemic. Put the plan in motion in 2019, and serendipitous type thing, I suppose. But anyway, I am so glad that you are here joining me. I wanted to take some time and really kind of reach out to professionals across the board, but particularly my physician assistant colleagues, because you're the ones that I am mostly around. So I hear the struggles about feeling stuck, about feeling not as motivated, or maybe even feeling a little bit guilty when your goals or aspirations or interests kind of shift and you're no longer sure if where you are is the place that you want to remain. And that's okay. I want to kind of shift the paradigm a little bit and talk about, feelings of stuckness and how we can embrace those feelings and really listen to what that's telling us, because sometimes feeling stuck is the beginning of moving forward to a completely different space. In fact, for me, becoming a PA was a result of feeling stuck. So I worked in a variety of professions before, and was at a place where I was doing well, but I just felt like there was more. I felt like there was more for me to be doing. I had the energy, I had the motivation, I had the fervor, but just didn't feel it fit with what I was doing at that particular moment. And what I was doing at that moment, I was actually working in real estate. Two companies. One was for sales, where I helped other people buy and purchase homes and investment properties. And then my husband and I also had a company where we bought investment properties for ourselves. But I just felt like it was more for me to be doing. And I won't go into all the details of the story, but I was with some friends one day, and we were all just kind of having this conversation about how children are getting older. What are we going to do? Like, are we going to go back to work? And one of my friends said, well, my husband, who happens to be an MD, my husband said that I should look at becoming a PA. And I was like, what's the PA? And she's like, the PA, the ones that, they wear the white coats too, but they're not the nurse. They're not the doctor, but they can like tell you what's going on with you. They write prescriptions. And I thought about it. I was like, yeah, I have one of those. And seriously, no kidding, I went home and actually started doing research on physician assistants. At that time, where I live in the state of South Carolina, there was only one PA program. And that one PA program, actually the very next day, had an information session. And I told my husband, like, I'm signing up for this. I don't know why. There's something that's kind of speaking to me regarding this, but I'm going to really look into this, because I think I would be a great PA. Based on everything that I'm reading, I just need the science behind it. But as far as people skills and, educating patients, I got this. I can do that. So anyway, I went, and it was so funny because at that information session, I felt like a little old lady. I'm sitting in the back of the room. Here I am, full grown, married with 3 kids. And there were all these students. Some were like fresh out of college. A lot of them were there with their parents. And I texted my husband, and I was like, I feel out of place. Like, this is intimidating, not to mention the fact that they just mentioned that they usually receive between 700 and 800 applications every year for 68 spots. So anyway, I decided to pursue it. And after retaking the GRE in a matter of, I think, about 3 weeks, signing up for some classes at the local technical college, because a lot of my prereqs were outdated, particularly my science ones. So I had to retake those. Long story short, I applied, got accepted, and was able to start PA school. And when I started PA school, check this out, I wrote down some specific goals. And this was during didactic year, because I was a non-traditional student. Like I said, I had children at the time. My kids were 6, 9, and 12. So I wrote down that when I start working as a PA, I don't want to work full time. I still want to be able to be mom and be present in their lives. I don't want to miss the award ceremonies. I don't want to miss the field trips. I had already been there and done that. In one of my previous careers, I worked over 40 hours a week, and I felt like I was missing out a lot in their lives. So I wrote down, as a PA, part-time hours, full-time pay. I don't want to be far away from home. I want to be able to get back to, my house and to the kids' schools if I need to. I don't want to work weekends, and I don't want to work nights. And when I get a little experience under my belt, I also want to be able to travel around, because as you can see behind me, I like to travel. These are countries that I've been to, and I want to still be able to do that as a PA. Well, I admit those goals sound quite lofty. And when I wrote them down, I did not write them down with the intention of being able to check all of those off the box. If I could get one or two, I felt like I'd be good with that. So when I graduated, every single one of those things came to pass. The travel part came in a little bit later, but everything else came to pass. And when I started working in psychiatry, which ended up being a job that I got on a rotation, and then working in internal medicine. A family friend owned a practice and needed some help because he was really busy. So both of those jobs, I did not go on Indeed, did not have to, really sell myself, but it was one of those situations where I believe if you write your goals down, I'm big on goal setting. If you write your goals down, it makes it easier to align with opportunities that align with your goals. So anyway, coming back to feelings of stuckness, I have felt stuck multiple times in my life, and even in my career as a PA. So again, that's why I'm here, to offer some motivation to those of you who may be feeling stuck, or if you're not feeling stuck, that's awesome. There may come a time where you feel stuck, or you may have a colleague who's talking about feeling stuck. So share this with them. But feeling stuck has actually worked for me, and it's propelled me into thinking outside the box. So again, working in psychiatry and liking to travel, I was beginning to feel a little stuck geographically in terms of, limitations on traveling. And I thought about it in 2019. I think we traveled quite a bit. And each time that I travel as an independent contractor who's working, I don't get paid. I don't have, benefits or, paid time off. So when I travel, I'm not able to work. So I thought about it. Well, this is one area of medicine where we're not palpating or auscultating. So is it possible to be able to see patients while I'm traveling? Like, how does that work? If I'm out of the office, or even if I'm not traveling. I live in Charleston, South Carolina. So, every year there's threats of hurricanes. Even if we get rain, it can be pretty dangerous to drive around these streets. Traffic. Sometimes I have patients who work really difficult schedules. It's hard for them to come in to be seen. I have patients who have problems with childcare. They don't want to bring a newborn baby out to the appointment. So a variety of different issues. And I was thinking this would be great for patients as well, to be able to adhere to their treatment schedules, not have to risk running out of medications. Because most of my patients, when they did not come to their appointments, it wasn't because they didn't want to come. There were mostly legitimate reasons why they couldn't make it to their appointment. So anyway, started doing some research in 2019, lots of research about, the legal side. And there's so many different laws. You have your PA Practice Act, which varies from state to state. You have your, federal regulations, all of that good stuff. And listen, people ask me often, like, about starting a practice. It takes a lot of research. There's pros and cons to both. Like, in addition to me running my own practice, I also do independent contract work for other practices. And there's pros and cons to both. But anyway, feeling kind of stuck geographically is what got my wheels turning on. Could we do something like telepsychiatry? So my point in this is, as a PA, a lot of times it's kind of laid out for us. You go to school, get the degree, pass your pants, right? That's the goal. And then you start working, and that's fine. And for some people, that plan works for a long period of time. But if you find yourself starting to feel a little discontented, it's okay. If you're feeling, some discontentment or disenchanted or whatever the case may be, it's okay. And I want you to sort of embrace that and ask yourself, what is this telling me? Is this my own soul's way of saying there's something out of alignment? Because sometimes when we get in positions, we feel like we can only do one thing. So whatever your skill set and your gifts and your passion, if you're not able to bring those to the table with you every single day while you're PAing, can you still find a way to do that? I know plenty of PAs who do clinical work, and then they also do other things. I know a PA who is a pilot. I have a couple of PA friends who are also authors. I have a PA friend who is a musician and performs frequently on weekends around town. So I would encourage you to remain balanced, because that's a quick way to get burned out if you are constantly just, focusing on work and not able to incorporate who you are as a person. So don't ever be afraid of that. Listen, there are so many different things we can do as PAs. Like, I am so proud to be a PA. Number one, within the clinical roles, did you know that 70% of PAs have reported working in more than one discipline? So like I mentioned, I've worked in psychiatry and internal medicine. I did that for the first 4.5 to 5 years of my career. And talk about adding variety. Absolutely. And it's beneficial, because when I'm working in psychiatry, working in internal medicine, it helped me to stay abreast of all those disease processes we learned in PA school. So if I'm talking to a patient who is suffering from depression, I'm also thinking, well, is there something else going on? Have you had any medication changes? Maybe started a beta blocker or something like that, where you're feeling more fatigued or a little, foggy, or perhaps there's some issue with thyroid. So it just kind of helps with that holistic approach to treating patients. And then vice versa, working in the internal medicine clinic, when patients come in, they're often complaining of, things like abdominal pain or headaches, or maybe they're presenting with, something else is very specific. But I also learned how to quickly screen and assess for psychiatric conditions as well. So as a PA, we have that flexibility. Maybe you're like, I like the discipline I'm in. I have no desire to switch over and work somewhere else, and that's completely fine. But there's still an opportunity to add variety within a particular discipline. So I'll just give an example of psychiatry. So I do primarily outpatient psychiatric care, but there's also an opportunity to do some work inpatient, or maybe even subspecialize and do some addiction medicine. So there's just a lot of different options. And it does make me sad when I talk to some of my colleagues who are thinking about completely leaving medicine altogether, because, they're just stuck or burned out, or just feel, I would say, hopeless. Like, what's the point? When they've gotten to that point without exploring some of the other options. And that's why I'm here. I'm trying to get this message out as much as I can about retention, because a lot of emphasis is placed on recruiting and creating a very good experience for students, PA students. But what happens to our workforce? What happens when we have PAs who are starting to get burned out? And again, this is not something that's just specific to PAs by no means. This is pretty much every profession. And then when you break that segment down to healthcare professionals, add in a pandemic, you're going to see it a lot more. But I'm speaking mostly because I'm talking to more and more PAs who are undergoing some of these issues. And I guess I'm one of those people, when I see a problem, I'm a problem solver. Back in 2020, in the height of all the racial injustices, NCCPA put together some town halls with PAs of color across the nation. And I was one of the ones who was involved in that, and thought it was just such a fantastic idea. And I'm thinking, we don't have anything like this in South Carolina. So as if I didn't have enough on my plate, I started an organization for PAs in South Carolina, Black PAs in South Carolina, to create a space, a safe space during that time, because as you all remember, it was a pretty difficult time, and still is. But yeah, anyway, that is my purpose of doing this motivational moment. Again, if you're feeling stuck, don't run away. Stay in that stuckness for a minute and start to think about, why do you feel like you're stuck? Have you started exploring your different options? What are your goals? Think back to when you first started, when the novelty was there and you're, super excited, you have the fervor. Try to go back to that moment, and what looks different now? What can you do in this moment? Yeah, so that's pretty much why I wanted to be here today, because I can't reach everybody on an individual basis. So I figure if I can start sharing this information, and we just kind of like share it with each other. If you want to talk to me some more, absolutely, I'd be more than happy to talk to you. I've done a lot of precepting with PA students, mentoring, coaching, speaking. I did a topic 2 years ago at our state PA CME conference, and I'm so fortunate that they allowed a space for personal development, because as you know, CME conferences are mostly based on, medical things to make sure we stay abreast of what's going on, the, new changes in the medical world. But with the pandemic, we were able to stop and pause and do a session on work-life balance. And the feedback from that was tremendous. And that lets me know that there is a need for our professionals, our PAs, to hear more about how do we create work-life balance? How do we think outside the box? What are some of our options so that we don't get burned out, so that we can remain in this profession that we worked so hard to get into? Listen, I have not done anything harder than PA school. And to me, PA school was not hard based on the content itself, because organic chemistry, which was a prereq that I took before PA school, to me, that was the hardest thing I've ever experienced in my life. But PA school was hard just from the sheer amount of information that's being thrown at us. And we have to take that information in a very short period of time and digest it, interpret it, and apply it. And then sometimes turn around and teach it as we're, teaching our patients about their conditions. And listen, that is no easy feat. So the fact that you got through PA school, I believe you can do anything, seriously, because those skills are transferable. So anything that requires somebody to gather a lot of information or absorb a lot of information and then digest it and apply it, you can do anything. So it was so nice being with you in these moments. Time just goes by so fast when I'm talking about stuff that I love, but I hope you have some inspiration and some motivation from this. And reach out to me if you want to talk some more. And I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. Bye.